Hello, sixth grade. It's Mrs. Brown, and I wanted to give you a little information about linking verbs. We've been working on the verb chapter, and we've been talking, up to this point, we've been talking about action verbs. And so now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I want to go back to this, what do I call this, little diagram that I gave you a few days back about the categories of verbs. And we're going to be talking about linking verbs this week. And so we're leaving this side of the diagram and we're going over here. So I want to just give you this kind of sense of a scheme a little bit. And hopefully it will help you understand where we're headed, where we've been and where we're going. And then you will have some practice with this, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow when we have our Zoom. Okay. So we're on page 90 and 91 in your book, in your textbook, and I would like you to have that open and look that over maybe as I'm talking, or definitely have your notebooks out so you can take some notes. Just to recap, verbs are divided into two big categories. And we've been over here up until today. We've been talking about action verbs. So those are verbs like run, jump, sing, laugh, dance. They're actions that somebody or something is performing, okay? And we've divided action verbs into two categories. We talked about transitive active verbs, and we talked about intransitive active verbs. And we said transitive active verbs are active verbs that have action verbs, that have direct objects. All right, so if we said like John hit the ball, that is an action verb, and it's transitive because John hit what? We have the direct object, hit the ball. So we have a transference of action from John through that action of hitting to the ball. The ball's the receiver. So we have a receiver of the action, or again, what we would call a direct object. The other category that we talked about, and you did a little bit of review on this, we'll talk a lot more about this when you come back in the fall, because this can get a little more complicated than what we've talked about so far. That is an intransitive action verb. So an action verb that does not have a direct object, doesn't have any kind of receiver, is still an action verb, but there's no transference of action from the subject to any kind of doer or receiver because there isn't one. And one of the examples I think I gave you was birds fly south for the winter. Okay, so if we have birds fly, that's a subject, and that's an action of birds flying, but there's no receiver or object there. Okay, then what we have are adverbs like fly where, south, which is the direction telling us where, and why we have for the winter. So that's a prep phrase telling why they fly, okay, or why they fly south. So even though it's an action verb, it doesn't have any kind of a receiver. And that's what you practiced last week. Well, today, starting on page 90 and 91, you're going to be looking at linking verbs. Okay, so I wanted to do just a little bit of briefing with you on what a linking verb is. A lot of you know what they are, but some of you may have forgotten. So if you go to the right side of our scheme here, the right side is the linking verb. The linking verb and the action verb are two completely different things. And so what applies to the action verb does not apply to the linking verb, and vice versa. Okay, so if you look at linking verbs, there are actually two types of linking verbs. The kind of one that you think of all the time and that you mention in class is the verb to be. So the verb to be is am, are, is, was, were, be, being, been. Those are the principal parts of the verb to be. When the verb to be stands alone in the sentence, like she was asleep, all right, then was is the verb to be. It is the main verb. It's the only verb in that sentence, and it is a linking verb, all right? It's not a helping verb. It's not with an action verb like John was running down the road. Was running that's not a linking verb. That's an action verb that has a helping verb to give us tense, all right? This is when the was or the is, the am, the are, they're all the only verb in the sentence. They're by themselves. They're linking, okay? They are linking the subject on the left to the subject complement on the right. So linking verbs always have on the other side of them, on the left side they have a subject, and on the right side they have a complement. And a complement can be a noun or can be an adjective. This is something that you already are pretty familiar with. So you could have a sentence like, John is tired. Is the linking verb, and tired is an adjective. Or you could have a sentence like, John is my brother. John is the subject, is the linking verb, and brother is a noun, subject complement. And whatever it is, whether it's a noun or an adjective, it goes back and is related to the subject. So if it's brother, it renames the subject John. John and brother are the same person. If it's John is tired and it's an adjective, tired goes back to describe or modify that subject. So a linking verb is kind of like it's like an equal sign, okay, between the subject and the subject complement, right? And it's like a big circle, okay? John is brother, the brother is John. John equals tired, tired equals John. Right, so that's very simple because it doesn't vary from that. It stays that same structure all the time if you have a linking verb. Now, the only thing that is different that maybe you have not heard of, and it is in the book, it's on page 90, and I want to point it out to you, is that there are some verbs that can be action or linking. They're not verbs to be. They are words, there's a list of them in your book, and they are verbs such as grow, feel, become, remain, appear, seem, and taste. And I want you to pay close attention to these and put them in your notes, because these verbs can go, sometimes they're actions and sometimes they are linking verbs. That's the only thing that I think might give you any trouble in this unit or in this little section. So let me give you an example, a real simple example that you can include in your notes. First, I'm going to erase this. And I'm going to use the verb to grow, okay, as an example. Now again, grow can be a linking verb or an action verb. So we'll put to grow. Right. If I use it as an action verb, then I'm probably going to have some kind of a direct object. So it would be, Mom grows vegetables in the garden. Okay, so this is using the word grow as an action verb. Mom is the subject. Mom grows what? Vegetables. So vegetables is the direct object, okay? And in the garden is a prep phrase that tells where those vegetables are grown. Now we can use grow as a linking verb. And it means, again, when we use it this way, it really is synonymous with like became or becomes. Increases in the state of being. That's really what it means. It means you're growing in this being, state of being. So let me show you how that works. So it might say something like, Bob grew tired as the day went on. Not a great way to end the sentence because you're not supposed to end a sentence in a prep phrase. But if you just look at the sentence where it says, Bob grew tired, Bob is the subject, and grew now doesn't mean to actually grow something like the action of growing it. It means that the state of being tired, that state of being, like the verb to be, state of being, tired, grew. Okay, it got expanded and got expansive. Tired here is an adjective. It's a subject complement that is an adjective. So Bob grew tired is a linking verb. Mom grows vegetables is an action verb even though we're using the same exact verb, to grow. Okay? And if you look at this list, you can do this with other things like taste. All right, you can actually taste something, which is an action, or you can use it as a linking verb. The soup tastes salty. All right, so you have to think about if it says the soup tastes salty, you have to look at the subject and say, is the subject performing an action? Is the soup tasting something? No. It's the state of being. In the state of being salty. Whereas if I say, I tasted the steak, then I'm actually performing an action. So with these specific words, you have to really give it some thought and decide, is this an action? And if it is an action, is there probably a direct object following it? Probably so. Not necessarily, doesn't have to be there, but it probably does have some kind of a direct object. If it's being used as a linking verb, it's probably being followed up with an adjective. And so that's the subject complement as an adjective. So anyway, I want you to read 90 and 91, and I want you to complete the workbook pages I've put on your lesson plan today, the parts that I want you to do. And I want you to practice linking verbs, okay? And then when we get together on Tuesday for our Zoom, then we'll talk a little bit about it, and you can ask me questions, and we'll go over those workbook pages, okay? All right, I'll see you Tuesday.